words. I've lived out in the country and everything, so that's been my lifelong passion for creating art, especially with nature and stuff. And today I'm excited to share with you the, not just the finished pieces, but the path of curiosity and experimentation that's defined my artistic journey. I don't think I can read all this, but anyways, I started when I was younger in high school making macrame plant hangers, and I sold those in a local store. And that's when I realized that people like art and they're willing to pay for it. So that started me on a journey of creating a lot of other things. In my 20s, I started learning how to do stone cutting with a hammer and chisel, making gravestones. And later on, I started doing some etchings, like the etching on this granite piece here. I'd take a diamond tipped engraving tool and I would etch entire scenes on a piece of big black granite. And I enjoyed doing that. And let me see, I'm not doing very well at this. I started doing other things like drawing and painting and writing. I wrote a book a few years back. If anybody's interested, then I'll give them a copy. A significant turning point came around my 30th birthday when I started learning about computers, little things in molds and stuff. And then I started adding different things like stones and sand and little bugs and plants, and try to do something a little bit different than just putting colors in a mold. And of course, creating a lot of things, you do have an awful lot of failures, things that don't work. And I learned a lot of ways that you don't work with resin. Like if you use the wrong resin and you make a big pour, then it can ruin the entire thing, making a lot of bubbles in it and cracks and everything else. And then shortly after that, my daughter suggested, instead of making just pretty things, why don't you make something that you can actually use? And that's when I started making the chess sets. And using my carving and my woodworking and the resin and everything, I was able to come up with some pretty cool ideas for making the resin, the chess sets. And then I also started incorporating things like light, like this one here, got the bugs in it, but it's got the light underneath it, which really brings it out. And the lamp over there with a little dandelion and the bug in it, and a couple other carvings that I've had. And like I said, there's a lot of different kinds of resins that you can use. And one of the resins that I started to experiment with was UV resin, which stays as a liquid until it's exposed to ultraviolet light. So I carved this snake out of a very soft, pulpy wood, and then I painted the whole thing with UV resin, a little bit at a time, because it's still a liquid, and it would just drip off if I didn't put the UV light on it. So it's very time consuming, but it also makes it a lot more solid and a lot more durable. And I ended up doing the same thing with this dragon, because this dragon I had under a big bell jar, and you couldn't see it very well, but it was also very soft clay. But it took about 8 hours and covered this entire thing with the UV resin. So it's almost like a plastic now. Still got the soft clay underneath it if you were to take a knife or something to it. So don't take a knife to it. Let me see. So every project in my collection begins as an idea, and I think about it for a while, and sometimes it takes me months to come up with how I'm going to create something. And some things I never get around to how it's going to be done. But to do that dragon, to preserve it, it took me almost 7 years before I figured out the best way to do it. So it's just underneath that bell jar, and I couldn't really, bring it out for people to look at it and stuff. So I'm glad I finally figured out how to make it a little bit more solid. Let me see. As I stand here surrounded by my creations, I realize that the uncertainty of where each experiment might lead isn't something to fear. It's precisely what keeps me moving forward. So I thank you for joining me and seeing my journey and the different stuff that I've created. So if you have any questions, just let me get my glasses so I can see you. Yes.
I love the entwined dragons. Tell us something about those.
These here?
Yes, sir.
There's a lot of different molds that you can buy at stores or on the internet or whatever, and you can put colors in them or different things like I've done with these. And those molds there, I actually painted the mold itself with different types of like different colored powders. And then when you put the resin in it, then it makes it like it's painted right on the resin. And that's worked for a couple different things that I've worked on. Any other questions? No? Sweet.
I got one.
Yes.
What's your favorite mode of working? Like resin and wood, or clay,
Well,
or?
I enjoyed working with the clay, but it's also very time consuming.
Right.
And like there was another piece that I had here, it was an alien head, and it was done with a clay that does harden, but it also hardened very fast, so I didn't put a lot of details in it. But with like this clay here, it never hardens, so I could keep going back and changing different things. Like this Robin Williams here, that took about 3 weeks. I made the bust, it didn't look anything like Robin Williams, so I'd leave it and then come back to it a couple days later and figure out a couple different things to change on it. And that's why I liked working with that clay, because it was very easy to go back and change things. But it also needs to be preserved somehow. But since I've started doing the carving and everything, I enjoy using the resin to make the wood a lot more solid. And there's one that I'm going to be working on soon that it's a rubber ducky, right? But it's not really rubber, because I'm going to be making it out of wood and resin. Hopefully it'll look awesome when it's done, but we'll see. But I think the carving and stuff I've been enjoying a lot more the past year or so.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Eclectic is right, that's all I can say.
Yeah. Yeah, I like to experiment with a lot of different things and see what happens.